Okay, this is problem number 3 on the Chapter 9 homework. So, a survey of 2,280 adults in a certain large country aged 18 and older conducted by a reputable polling organization found that 413 have donated blood in the past 2 years. All right, so in part A, it says obtain a point estimate. So that's point estimate, that's our p hat, for the population proportion of adults who have donated blood in the last 2 years. So for us, that's the 413 out of 2,280. So that divided out comes out to 0.1811. So to 3 decimal places, 0.181. Then in part B, verify that the requirements for constructing a confidence interval about P are satisfied. So you might remember from the notes that the two rules are these two rules right here. So our sample size was that N, this is our X, is the 2,280. So this is going to be 2,280 times P hat, which is 0.1811. I'm going to use more decimal places, times 1 minus 0.1811. And the question is that greater than or equal to 10? So we're going to put that in the calculator. Okay, so mine's a little bit out of order, but it still works. I've got my p hat times my n times my 1 minus my p hat, which comes out to 338.13. So let's see, this is 338.13, 130, which is greater than or equal to 10. So as we fill this in, I don't have the drop down boxes, but what they wanted you to say here is the sample we can assume to be a simple random sample, and the value 300. Here they wanted us to put the formula, the n times p hat times 1 minus p hat came out to be 338, 3 decimal places, so 338.130, which is greater than or equal to 10. And then we're going on to the second rule, and the blank is less than or equal to 5% of the population. So this is population, and the sample size. Okay, so let's look and see how it came out to. This is 2280 is less than 0.05. I guess if it's a really large country, even though we don't know that number, we're going to go ahead and assume that 2,280 is less than 5% of the population. So can assume to be less than or equal to 5% of the population. All right, don't love that they have us assuming so much, but it'll be okay. All right, so then in part C, construct and interpret a 90% confidence interval for the population proportion of adults in the country who have donated blood in the last 2 years. Select the correct choice below and fill in any answers within your choice. So 90%, if we go to the critical value chart, 90% is 1.645. So I wrote that down for us here so that we would remember that. And then we're going to go do our confidence interval. So what was our p hat again? 0.181. So this will be 0.181. Let's maybe go a few more decimal places just to be sure. I don't have it on there. Okay, so I went and got some more decimal places. So 1140. 140 minus our critical value, where'd you go? 1.645 times the square root of our p hat, 1.81140, times 1 minus 0.181140 all over our sample size of 2,280. Is it? Yeah. Okay. And so, we put that in our calculator. Okay, and that comes out to be, here I put it in my calculator, and so 0.1679, 0.167, what do they want us to round to? 3 decimal places, so 1.68 for the lower bound. And then for the upper bound, it's the same stinking thing in the calculator. The only thing you're changing is this minus to a plus. Let me show you a cheater's trick here. Do y'all know that you can go up here and just copy and paste this line down here and then just go back and arrow through and just change that minus to a plus without having to re-enter that whole line? That's handy, isn't it? So 0.194 to 3 decimal places. Okay, and so our choices are A, we are 90% confident. The 90% comes from the confidence interval that we have between those two numbers. And the other one, it's that it would be a 90% probability. And remember with me that this 90% has to do with how many samples we think would hold the true proportion of this country in it. So it's not a probability, it's a prediction of how many samples we think would contain the true proportion of people that actually donated blood in this scenario. So there's our two numbers, our lower bound and our upper bound, and our 90% confidence. So it's not a probability, it's all about a prediction of how many samples. So then the last problem, explain what 95% confident means in 95% confidence interval. And it's all about this key phrase right here. We expect 95% of these red bars, of these intervals, would actually contain this blue P, which is the actual true proportion of whatever it is that you're talking about. So like when we talked about it in class, we said P represented the true proportion of United States citizens that voted for Trump. So 95% of these green bars contained the blue line. They contain that true proportion. But then you have some rogue ones out here, right? That one, this one, maybe those don't contain the true proportion. So only 95% of them would contain it. Okay, so that's what that means.